Hi everyone, this is the first weekly exercise for the Studio module where you're going to develop line flow and line weight using observation sketching of these sketch models. This is a sketch of a paper strip model where we're basically just using paper strips, creating some sort of structure and then drawing what we see. You can see on this sketch that we have varied line weight, so heavier lines to the bottom of the object, heavier lines to bring certain features of these paper strips forward, and lighter lines at the top indicating direction of light source. There's also a little bit of hatch shading to indicate form and a bit of cast shadow. For this exercise, you're welcome to use a black colored pencil, and I'll just be using a Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer. This is the model that I'll be sketching for you for the demo today, and you can see I've got my paper strip held down by some drawing pins, and it's just pinned down onto some foam core. If you don't have foam core or drawing pins, you're welcome to just use sticky tape onto any sort of surface, as long as it holds its structure. And I won't be drawing the drawing pins, they're just there to keep my structure in place. So basically, to make these paper models, I've just got an A4 foam core board. That's just foam sandwiched in between two pieces of paper. I've got some drawing pins, a snap-off blade, a sheet of A3 paper, and a steel ruler. This steel ruler is about 25 millimeters thick, and that's perfectly fine for the paper strip. Anything about that thickness, 25 or 30 mil, would be good. So I'm just going to cut a strip of paper the length of that A3 sheet. So on the left I have positioned my sketch model in the angle that I want to draw. On the right hand side here I've got a sheet of A3 paper in landscape format. And what I'd like you to do for this exercise is have 3 sketches per page. If you're drawing small, I'd like to have a minimum of 3 sketches per page. So consider how large you would draw that object to. So consider how large your sketches will be to fill up this page. Okay, obviously, basically what I'm saying is don't draw tiny. What I will do now is zoom into this top left area and start to show you the process of drawing these observational sketches. I'm quite happy for you to leave your light construction lines on the page. My approach would be to have a look at areas that, or shapes that I recognize, like an ellipse through here, a major ellipse through here, and it's almost like a cone. Remember, this is about fluidity and flow of line. Now, the perspective view that I do on this screen might be slightly different because of the position of my camera and what I see, but I'm basically going to draw my ellipses, and then there's a bit of a cone. I'm going to think about the thickness of this paper strip. So there's basically that first cone. Then I'm going to look at this other feature through here, and it tangents this ellipse. So I'll just draw in another ellipse there, and it's larger at the back. I'm going to think about the thickness of that strip, and it's going to tangent probably about here. And I'm keeping my line weight pretty light. This is the back edge. And of course it's going to run through to about here. That's going to join up and flow through. That's the leading edge. And it'll stay the same or consistent thickness. I'm drawing through, right? I'm drawing transparently through. And that's actually what I'll see of that edge. This comes through, lands about here. Now this is important because you've got this strip. Just modifying that, drawing through, and that strip comes through underneath and down. So I've just zoomed my camera in slightly, but now I'm going to come in and make some adjustments and commit to some line weight. Okay, so I'm just going to define my sketch with heavier line, not necessarily thick, just defining the sketch. And I'm being wary of the continuity of, let's say, the thickness and flow. I want to make sure that this line looks like it continues through that strip. I have a tangent here, and I have a tangent here. This tucks under and comes around. Now I haven't added any line weight just yet. I'm just defining the actual structure. Okay, so that would continue through, this would continue through. This is just a line that we can see the continuity of this back edge. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to add some line weight. Oh, we're missing one more. And that's this back edge through here. And I want that to look like it's connecting up through. And that's it. Okay, so there's that flow. I'll start off with the base edges because this is sitting on my my phone call board, right? So I'm just going to beef up this bottom edge. I'm going to continue through here and darken this edge because that's also sitting on my foam core base. This part of the strip's also sitting on my base. And what I'm going to do here is vary my line weight. And you'll see that, you know, this strip here, this part of this curve sits in front of this strip. So when we use heavier line weight, it'll bring this edge forward. And then I'm just going to thin it out as I come up to the top part of the sketch. Or sorry, the top part of that edge. This line here passes through and then is back into view. So I'm going to harden that edge. That's an edge pointing downwards and then continues through to that line. We use line weight to bring edges forward and shift them back. So if I take this edge here, we know that this edge is in front of that part of the strip. So if I just give this some definition, it'll bring it forward and make that surface look like it's behind. This will take some time, okay? It'll take some practice. And because I'm using a black colored pencil, you're very welcome to use a black colored pencil. Black colored pencils you can't really rub out. I just don't want you to use grey lead pencil. Okay, there's no erasing here. And I want that to be believable in terms of it continuing through and underneath. You'll see here that when I harden this line, this edge, it'll bring this edge in this surface in front of that one. And I'm varying my line weight. Okay, so we're starting to get some dimension. Any edge that's facing upwards, I'll keep quite light. You know, just by adding this line weight right now, it's giving us an indication that maybe my light source is coming from the top right. Okay, this edge sits in front of this surface here. So this part of the strip is in front of that part at the back there that tucks under. So I'm going to define that, making it darker, not necessarily thicker. Same here, making it darker, but not as thick as this edge here. I just want to lift that forward. Vary some line weight here. That's pretty much it. It's a little bit thicker through here, so I want to continue that weight. At this stage, when I'm about to show some shading, it's going to look a little bit different to, let's say, this live image that we've got on the left. So I'm going to make some decisions in terms of what is in shade and what is in highlight. So we think about where our light source is coming from. I'm going to say my light source is coming from the top right, and then think logically about these shapes and forms. So if my light is coming from above, I'm going to have this in shade, and I'm just going to hatch nice sharp black pencil. Okay, my light's going to hit this edge and possibly cast a shadow here onto this strip, this part of the strip, and I'll hatch that. And what it does is it brings this edge up and shows that there's a cast shadow here. Similarly, this edge might cast a shadow inside, and I'll hatch that out. Okay, so we've got some good shape and form described inside there. My light source coming from above, I would have, say, some shading on this part of the curve. And I'll just let that be a little bit lighter. Okay. Now, even though the live image to the left there is not going to show this, I'm just going to use a bit of license to say that this edge drops a cast shadow to here. My light coming from the top right might be hitting through here and creating a shadow on that strip. So I might say it's about there. I'll hatch that out. Let's just allow that to fade out. This is a curve. My light source is coming from the top right. I just want to show a bit of curvature through here. So, let's see, probably about here. Hatch that out. This pencil could be a little bit sharper, but that's okay. It might cast a shadow. This edge may cast a shadow onto here. Hatch that out. And let's say this may also connect up as part of the cast shadow through here. The cast shadows aren't important. They are there to support the view or the sketch. The main focus is here, isn't it? So there you go. Obviously practice this and do it a few times. Even the same object, sketch it a few times, because line weight, line flow, and continuity of this curvature, of these curvatures, particularly the lines that are invisible, right? That get hidden by the surface in front. This is why you use your construction lines to help have some believable continuity of these edges, whether they're at the back or at the front. Okay, so here I've got a different structure. It's a little bit more elongated, a little bit more fluid. I've chosen an angle that I think is quite interesting, nice sort of sculptural form. I'm just going to think about the sweeps and curves that I can see, right? I've got an ellipse here at the top, and that's kind of conical form, and then this fluid curvature through here. I've just repositioned my page. Right, so there's my bottom left edge of my page. I'm going to think about where I'd like to position that view and then just start constructing. So I'm going to look at that ellipse, say it's about here. It's got, so this is the edge, and then I want to have, say, the depth or the thickness of that strip might be about here. Just lightly open up that ellipse a bit. Here's this curve about here, and it sweeps. Something like that. The tab of that strip. Now this is the strip thickness, and that needs to continue through. So I'm thinking about the constant thickness of this paper strip. Okay, so the thickness of this strip is consistent all the way through. Here's that top edge, comes and turns to about here. Swings over and joins this edge. Here I'm joining up. I want to think about the thickness of that strip being consistent. This edge is the bottom, and it must join this edge, which is the front of that base that bottom edge. And then it twists. It comes up and twists. So it's actually going to join probably about here. Now this is drawing through, right? Drawing transparently to see that line. And this edge exposes itself and twists and comes to about here. That's the underside edge, which goes underneath this edge. That follows through and must continue in that line. I'm going in for some definition. This edge here sits in front of this surface. So I'm just defining that. This continues up. This must meet at a nice smooth curve. And pay attention to that smooth transition. Thinking about the thickness of that paper strip and the fluidity of this curve. This is the underside edge. Again, committing to fluid line. And paying attention to this continuity through here, because that must join up to that bottom edge. End of the tab. These two tabs actually, and I purposefully sort of connected them so that they would sit on top of each other. This is the top part of the strip. And here's that back edge. So there are all my details, construction. Now I'm going to add line weight to communicate some sort of light source direction as well. Okay, so here's my base edge, my baseline. Sorry, when I say baseline, the bottom of the edge that's sitting on the table. So I'm going to go for heavier line weight. Just use my black colored pencil. And as I come up towards this top part of that strip, I'm just going to thin out my line thickness, my line weight. I'm going to follow that through the thickness. Heavy line here. This is the bottom edge of this strip that turns. It's also touching the table. I want to make sure that line looks like it continues and then beef that up. And just like the previous sketch, this edge is sitting in front of this surface. So if I darken this edge, it'll bring it forward. I'm not necessarily making it thick, I'm just defining it. But it'll lift this edge forward, and of course when I put some hatch shading, it'll give a definition of that part of the strip turning towards us. Same through here. Again, committing to just a nice sharp dark line, not necessarily thick. And of course we've got this edge, which I'm going to make a little bit thicker because it's twisting, and when I make it thicker, it'll bring this edge forward of that surface. This back edge here, I'm just going to add a little bit of weight to it, just so it's not just a dead flat same thickness line. I'm going to use the same light source direction when I shade this too, so I'm going to assume that it's thicker here. and thinner at the top edge here. So I'm going to shade this with my light source from the top right. It may cast a shadow through here. Again, sharp black pencil. We're also going to have curvature. This tucks underneath. Light source from this direction. It might get some bounce light through here. I might just drop in a line about here and hatch this out. This twists and this surface is pointing downwards. This edge might cast a shadow onto this part of the strip through there. I'll just make that a little darker to lift it. This is curved. It's rolling over the top and turning under. Now, I might just put a little bit of shading through here. Just to show that that's turning away from light a little. And that construction line, which was that line, I'm just going to make that part of the shade. This edge, casting shadow on the underside here. Notice I'm making that a little bit darker. Not much more. I think the last thing I'll do is just a bit of, like I did with the first sketch, is some grounding cast shadow, just to ground the sketch onto the surface that it's sitting on. And you can use a little bit of license, okay? It's just to help ground the view so it's not, doesn't appear like it's floating on the page. And I might do something like this. Okay, so that line is this edge, that line is this edge, cast shadow, and then I'm just going to hatch it out. Okay, so there you go. 2 sketch models using varied line weight, a little bit of hatch shading, and communicating good line flow using black pencil only. So on the right hand side you can see I've zoomed out just to show the whole A3 page, and you can see the size of my sketches compared to the full A3 sheet, and we would comfortably fit 4 sketches onto this page. I wouldn't draw any smaller, and in fact in hindsight I probably would have drawn or preferred to have drawn a little bit larger to fill up the page, but of this scale for an A3 page, 4 sketches, 4 different structures, and 2 pages of those is the exercise requirement, and upload them on Thursday for feedback.